Well, good afternoon, folks. This is Bill Costanzo, Livestock Guardian Dog Program Specialist at the AgriLife Center in San Angelo. Today we're doing our 35th live Q&A session. Um, oh, I do want to thank our sponsors, both Lone Star Tracking. If you're looking for any type of GPS tracker, feel free to reach out to Lone Star Tracking. They can definitely get you taken care of there. And also Spot On Fence. If you're looking for any type of invisible fence needs, I would recommend Spot On Fence. We use both of those companies' products to monitor and kind of keep track of the guard dogs at the AgriLife Center and its ranches. Also want to thank the Sheep and Goat Predator Management Board for providing funding for the program. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully everybody is logging on today, and we actually have sound. So if you are logged on and you can't hear me, if you can, let me know in the comments, and we'll see about trying to fix that microphone. But I think we have it fixed from last month, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here today. We do have quite a few questions, so unless there's some follow-up ones, I don't know if we'll be able to get to any extra questions today like we normally can. So our first question is from Becca Pitts. She wants to know, how much does the sex of livestock guardian dogs working together matter? They have a female that had a litter of all males, and they're considering keeping 2 or 3 of the pups. The pups are a mix of Anatolian Shepherd and Great Pyrenees and some Akbash. The female that they have works well with one of her litter mates that's a male. He's neutered, and she will be spayed soon. They're almost 3 years old, and the pups are now 8 weeks. They'll neuter them as soon as the vet feels that they're old enough. Would it be best for the pups to be their own team and keep the adults together, or have a pup with each adult? Also, I found a short guide on our website regarding training, and she wanted to know if I can point them toward a more extensive source regarding training livestock guardian dog puppies. She says their adults haven't had any training. They just seem to do well with the goats. Well, most of the time, most livestock guardian dogs don't get a whole lot of training, and they just kind of have some natural instinct, Becca, and that's kind of how most of the dogs work. But to kind of answer your questions, I don't think sex matters at all. All the research that I've read, that I've been able to find, shows absolutely no guarding difference between male and female dogs, and it also doesn't show any difference between fixed or intact dogs. So I don't think you have an issue there. I haven't seen any issues or differences between the sexes of the dogs in our bonding project either when they're adults, nor have I seen any differences in the adult dogs that we do have that are working on the ranches. So I would say, pick the best puppy, the one that's the healthiest and most structurally sound, and kind of go from there. Not worry so much about the sex of the dog. Back to your one question, about getting the dogs fixed. I would recommend waiting as long as you can. We get all of our dogs fixed at least 10 or 11 months of age. I know sometimes the vets, because they spay a lot of pet dogs at 6 months old, they want to do the same with livestock guardian dogs, and that's not a good idea. They do need to be intact as long as possible, so that they get as much growth and hormone development as possible. I know a lot of information out there online recommends waiting until like 2 years old, although that doesn't take into the account that livestock guardian dogs like to roam, and one of the main reasons they roam is looking for a mate, and so that's why we fix our dogs a little young. We haven't seen any issues with fixing our dogs at that age. If you could wait until maybe a year, I think that would probably be the best. As far as your other question about placing a pup with each adult, while it's not foolproof, it does help with training. If you have an adult dog paired with a younger dog, it doesn't always work out, but if you have a good adult dog, it will help teach that puppy to be submissive and kind of how to guard and what to bark at and what not to bark at, and kind of what is a threat and what isn't. One of the things I would recommend to you is, since you kind of have your dogs and, you have a litter that you're wanting to keep, is look for some mentoring. Maybe check out the Texas Guard Dog Association's website, become a member. Once you do, you can make some posts on their Facebook group page, and you might be able to find a breeder or somebody else that's in the association that could provide some mentorship for you, which I would strongly encourage. Let's see if I have anything else in my notes here. I don't know if I have any really specific books for you. There's not a whole lot of things out there that are reliable. That's the biggest thing, reliable information on livestock guardian dogs. There are a couple good books on some breeds and things like that, but most of them, don't really deal a whole lot with training. They'll give you some basic things, kind of like the same information that I gave you in our fact sheet. I am working on another one, like a kind of second stage of training going into through adolescence. I just haven't had a chance to finish that fact sheet yet. So if you have some specific questions, feel free to email me, and I can kind of help you out from there, Becca. So our next question is from Mickey Patton. And by the way, if anybody has any comments or follow-up questions, feel free to post those in the comments here. But Mickey Patton's question, she says they have 2 female Pyrenees and Anatolian crosses that are 2.5, and their fights have escalated to be bloody. She has them scheduled to be spayed in March. She's had to separate them, with one in the pasture with the adult goats and the other in the kid pen and barn. She says they've always had loud, vicious fights, but without injuries and no real winner. But as of a month ago, one of them has become the alpha and the instigator of the fighting. She also has a third dog that's an Armenian Gamper, and that's a neutered male that's 3. He doesn't seem to be involved in the fighting, but she fears that he might join in at some point. She says he's a little more laid back than the females, and he's kind of a loner, but a 2-on-1 could be a fatal issue, and I would agree with you on that. She wants to know if I had to rehome a dog because of this behavior, or is there a way to work this out? So Mickey, we haven't had to rehome a dog yet because of this type of thing. But I have had producers reach out, about this same type of behavior that you're talking about fairly frequently. It's usually not because dogs are together. It's usually because they've brought in an adult dog into an established pack or group of guardians, and that's creating some issues. Not so much 2 dogs together that have been together for a while. Generally this is a problem, or more of a problem on small properties, because there's not enough for the dogs to do. And so tensions rise sometimes, and, by you separating them, that was a great idea. That was the first thing, that you should have done, and something I definitely would have recommended to you. The biggest thing is, getting them fixed is probably going to help. But even once they're fixed, it's going to take some time, for those hormones to level out. It's going to be probably 30, maybe even 60 days, for hormones to level out again, before they're going to kind of be a new dog again, or maybe acting a little bit different. So definitely keep them separated during that time, until, at least a month, I guess I would say. If that male dog hasn't mixed in with the females, he should remain neutral. But, again, like you mentioned, he may join in if he's in a pasture next to him, or if he can get over a fence or under a fence to, maybe protect one or the other female. One thing it's probably, I would probably recommend, because like I said, the hormones may not, getting them fixed and those hormones changing may not, stop this issue for you. It may decrease it, and it probably will, but it may not stop it altogether. And so I would purchase a good quality shock collar, something like the Garmin Tritronics 550. That's a higher quality shock collar than I normally recommend, because I think you need that in this situation. And so I would place that on the dog that is the instigator, and allow the dogs to come in contact across the fence line. As soon as that aggressive behavior starts with the instigator dog, I would have that shock collar set on high, and I would zap her good until she walked away. That's the nice thing about that Garmin tracker, or excuse me, e-collar, is that as long as you hold the button, it continues to shock. You know, some of these cheaper versions, like the Inverox that we use quite a bit, you know, it only gives a momentary shock, and then you have to keep pushing the button over and over and over again. So you need a good quality one, you know, that'll give a good strong shock to discourage that behavior. You know, the other thing I would do is, you know, obviously some yelling, and run that dog off every time that they come up to the fence line, and to be aggressive with the other one. You know, you may even need to get 2 collars and put one on each dog, so that hopefully that behavior, you know, doesn't continue. You know, I don't know that the shock collars are definitely going to work. You may end up having to just keep those dogs separated and find more for them to do, if at all possible. But you know, I definitely wouldn't leave them alone together, you know, until they get fixed for sure. So feel free to reach out if you've got any more questions or follow-up things. Next question is from Sarah Smith. She's one of our regulars on the Q&A session. Hopefully you're reaching out today, Sarah. Her girls have been getting in some trouble this past week. She says most of the issues seem to be happening at feeding time. Again, she's, you know, had some brief spats when they're running the fence line, and, you know, there's some perceived threat. You know, they get after each other. And thanks for the video, by the way, Sarah. She said they're not fed right next to each other, but they are in the same small feeding pen. She separated the bowls by a few more feet, but you know, she may be looking to extend that or separate the feeding area if it continues. What could be causing this all of a sudden? She says both her girls are spayed. Luna is 23 months old and been spayed for over a year, and Pi is 13 months old and was just spayed back in the fall, so the hormones shouldn't be playing an issue at this point, and that's correct, Sarah. The only thing different this week was some crazy cold single digits, she said, that they had in her area. They have multiple shelter options. Nobody's being forced together or crowded. They seem to enjoy themselves in the Arctic air. There's no blood or wounds, just a lot of noise and snapping, but she says that it sounds awful, and they're both big enough to do some real damage, you know, if they continue to cross that line. She says that they started to fight yesterday. She yelled at them, and then they stopped, and she said it was a lot more intense when they started in feeding pen, and so Pi had Luna cornered. So it's kind of surprising that Pi, being the younger dog, Sarah, you know, is kind of the aggressor. But, you know, it doesn't surprise me when you have 2 guard dogs together at all. You know, I would move forward with, you know, separating their bowls and maybe putting a panel in between there. I think you'd kind of mentioned that in a follow-up post. I think that's a good idea, and that's something that I would recommend to other producers. You know, I've got a couple of guard dogs that are fine. You know, dogs, personal dogs, except during feeding time. You know, they get along great out in the pasture. It's a male and a female. They work well together. But during feeding, they each have their own separate feeding station. And they go into that to be fed, and that keeps the aggression issues down. They've kind of figured out now that, you know, once each one of them's in there, they don't have to bark and growl across the panel at the other dog because, you know, they're separated. And so I think that's a good idea. You know, I definitely don't, we've talked about this before, I don't tolerate resource guarding from a guardian dog or any dog, you know, as far as that goes. And so I'm very hard on our guard dog puppies, you know, when we see resource guarding start, and that's generally when it starts as a puppy. So I would encourage anybody else out there that's listening, you know, if you've got a guard dog puppy and there's a couple of them, and, you know, somebody's growling or barking or snarling or whatever, you know, at their pen mate or litter mate, I would nip that in the bud now, because if you don't, most likely what's going to happen is at some point you're going to have a large vet bill with one or both dogs, or, you know, one or both again are going to end up being dead at some point, because I have had producers call, and, you know, these situations have gotten out of hand, and that's what's happened. And so that's never a good situation to lose a guard dog that way. And so I would encourage you, you know, to be strict on your dogs if there's any type of resource guarding going on. Kind of back to your question, Sarah, I'm not sure why Pie's become the alpha dog all of a sudden, especially since she's younger. But, one thing that you might want to try if she is still aggressive after, you kind of put that panel in between there is, again, get yourself a good e-collar and set it on high. And, anytime there's any aggression from either dog, even if it's Luna, put the collar on, set them up, and, shock whoever the aggressive dog is. That's probably the best thing. Make sure those prongs are touching the skin and, right on the throat. You may even have to clip some of the hair, and this goes for Mickey as well. If you try the e-collar, those prongs have got to be on the throat of the dog. They can't be over on the side or on the back of the neck. There's a reason they recommend it there, because that's a sensitive area for the dog, and they definitely feel that stimulation when you give it to them, whether it's the tone or the vibrate or the shock. So thanks for logging on, Steve. I'll get to your question here in a second. Our next question up is from Drew Bankert. They've got a 1-year-old Great Pyrenees female who won't stay in the woven fence with her sheep. They said that she never has. They've got 10 acres of fenced area for the sheep. She finds a way to escape within minutes. They've been keeping her in the barn with the main flock and letting her out daily for an hour or so when they do the daily feeding. Drew doesn't live there. He says he works long hours. They've got about 30 acres total, and she likes to leave our property. Most recently, she disappeared and crossed a state road. She was followed by 2 weaned ewe lambs. That's pretty good. Normally, it's the dog following the sheep. He has some electric netting in about ½ acre off the barn to give her outdoor time that he'd like to try. He says he used the netting for the sheep in a small pasture last fall, but he's not sure they need to be retrained. He didn't leave the dog in the netting full time. He said he'd love to fence the whole property, but can't afford it right now, and he wants some advice. So first, Drew, adolescent livestock guardian dogs, especially Great Pyrenees, in general, they can be roamers. And so if you haven't, trained them as a puppy to electric fencing, for instance, you can definitely do that later on, but by doing it as a pup, it definitely decreases the chance of them leaving later on. For anybody that has a guard dog puppy, I would strongly encourage you to train them, in a pen with some hot wire as a puppy. Using the electric fencing or invisible fence, should work well for your female to kind of keep her contained. Just make sure that if you're doing the electric fence, it needs to be putting out 7,000 or 8,000 volts. Okay, so make sure that you get a really good charger, one that's, bigger than the area that you need. And the other key thing on an electric fence is, get 3 8-foot ground rods and drive them in where there's only about maybe 6 inches above the ground, and have each of those rods separated by about 10 feet. And then connect your ground rod to each one of them, and then connect that to your fence charger. That will work no matter what time of the year, whether it's, dry out, wet out. You will get a good ground with that, and that's what most fence charger companies recommend. And I found that to work extremely well. If you do any less than that, a lot of times you get a spotty ground and you're not getting a full charge on the fence, and the dogs or livestock, whatever it is, don't get the amount of shock that they should get to respect that boundary. So, electric fence, that's what I'd recommend, or looking at some sort of an invisible fence collar, either one from like Spot On, or we've also used the Invisible Fence brand collars. Both of those are really good collars. We've used those for 2 or 3 years now at the center. A couple different versions of each one, and they've worked out really well for either kind of teaching young dogs to respect the fence, or correcting older dogs like this one. The biggest thing is both those companies have some really good training videos, and I would encourage you to watch those if you're looking at an invisible fence collar for your dog. It doesn't take a whole lot of training, but there is some training that you need to do if you're going to use one of those type of collars. So hopefully that helps you out, Drew. Next question is from Mark and Rosemary Adams. They've got a small farm with about 60 sheep, In Missouri, it's divided into several pens and a pasture. They've got 3 Anatolian Pyrenees cross dogs, ages 5 and 6. They were born there and trained on their farm. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. We've experienced problems at various times with 2 of the dogs playing with the sheep. One lamb died because the dog suffocated it by holding it down to lick on it. Other lambs and mature sheep have had their ears damaged at playtime, they said. One dog with the sheep has not been a problem playing with them, but his problem is that maybe once per week he'll leave the pasture and come closer to the yard to sleep during the day. It's about 100 yards away from the animals, and he's leaving his flock unprotected. Otherwise, he's good with his guarding duties, they said. The guardian who stays in the fence yard area sometimes escapes when the gate is open and runs free in the surrounding fields, but he always comes home the same day. So their question is we worked at training correctly and correcting issues as they arose, but we've considered changing the breeds for guardians to try to eliminate the trust issues and the wandering issues with these dogs. Is there another guardian dog breed that would be more trustworthy with sheep and less apt to wander? We're thinking of a Bernese Mountain Dog or a Crockachan. And so I guess first, I'll address your question about the different breeds. Bernese Mountain Dog, while they're a personal favorite of mine, I would love to have one, and I've always wanted a Bernese Mountain Dog. They are not a livestock guardian dog breed. They have prey drive, and so I would not recommend one of those to watch your livestock. Crockachan is a good choice. So is a Maremma or a Commodore. All 3 of those breeds have the tendency to be a close proximity dog. So their tendency is to stay close to the herd and not wander away from them. Now, it's not a guarantee, but it is a breed tendency for those 3 breeds. So I think you'd be good with going to any of those. Again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I would strongly recommend, that hot wire training while you have that puppy in the bonding pen and through the training period. Based on our research, that drastically reduces dogs roaming as adults. And I can't stress hot wire and invisible fence collar training, while that dog is an adolescent and as a puppy. So, the other thing that I would say is, I know you've worked on training and things, but have you tried an invisible fence collar for those dogs that are leaving? Having a dog that's 5 or 6, you've still definitely got some good working years in those dogs, and it might be cheaper to invest in some more training or retraining with those dogs than going out and looking for a new one. So just a suggestion. If you need some more help or recommendations on how to do that, feel free to reach out to me via email. I'm happy to help you some more with that. Next question that we have is from Nicole Zabrowski. Hopefully I pronounced that right, Nicole. She has 2 Great Pyrenees, and they're 11-month-old sisters. They've raised them since they were 8 weeks old. We're a chicken farm that specializes in SOP show silkies. They had a huge raccoon problem last year and decided to get Great Pyrenees. The problem is their Great Pyrenees kills any chickens they can access. She says if she uses the training collar, they stop and release the chicken, which is good. All the silkies are secured in coops and safe from the Great Pyrenees. However, they have other range of mixed breed chickens that they have for tick control. And sometimes those birds are flown into inside the livestock fence where the Pyrenee stays, and then the dog has killed them. She plans to have them both spayed at the end of this month. Will spaying help calm them down and not kill chickens? She wants to know if there's any other suggestions to help train the dogs to protect the flock of chickens. Would be greatly appreciated. And so first, Nicole, I think you're getting the dogs fixed at a good time before they start to roam, because they're going to be coming into sexual maturity sometime very soon. But sadly, getting them fixed is not going to stop the chicken killing issue. Okay, that's definitely not related to any of those developmental hormones that they have. the dogs are right in the middle of adolescence. That time is roughly between 8 and 18 months of age. Sometimes there's a little more leeway on either side depending on the dog. So you've just really got to work on training. And this is one of the hard things with poultry, is that you just got to kind of expect that you're going to sacrifice some birds, for the good of the whole during that training time. And so I know that's hard sometimes, especially, folks that have got just a few birds. Losing some can be, difficult on egg production and egg sales sometimes. But I would encourage you to continue to work with the dogs. You've obviously used a shock collar, which is probably a good thing. But I would work slowly and work on some retraining. Try to have somebody help you, have the dog on a leash, let the dog smell the birds, see the birds. Work on that for about 10 or 15 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week. Anytime the dog tries to, maybe grab the bird or follow the bird around or something like that, correct the dog. Teach them that, they can't do that kind of thing. If you want to do that with the e-collar, you can. I would probably, leave the collar off, during that type of training time. The other thing is obviously, as you figured out, you can't leave the dogs unsupervised with the birds. And so, it sounds like you have a good setup where, you've got birds in a coop and the dogs are kind of guarding the surrounding area. If there's any way that you can keep those other kind of mixed birds, out of the guardian dog area, I think that would probably be helpful as well. I know you need them kind of roaming around to control some of the tick problems that you have and other pest problems. But, again, just kind of work at that retraining. Start out, with the dog, like I said, the dog on a leash, then maybe go to just the dog with you in there. And anytime they, leave and wander off and start to follow any birds or anything like that, you need to correct that behavior. It just takes a lot longer to train a guardian dog to protect poultry. And I'm not even sure that they really bond to poultry like they do with, sheep and goats and some other types of livestock, or if they just kind of grow to accept the birds in their area. So that would kind of be my recommendation. I know it's not a whole lot of help for you. There is a really good video from Joy Combs on the Texas Livestock Guardian Dog Association's YouTube channel. They don't have a bunch of videos, but you should be able to find that one fairly easily. I think there's 4 or 5 videos on their YouTube channel right now. And she talks about how she bonds and trains dogs to poultry. And it's very similar to what you've already been doing, and I think you could probably pick up some tips from her. We just don't do any poultry bonding at the center because the Sheep and Goat Predator Board is the one that funds this program, and so we only do stuff with sheep and goats. But feel free to reach out, and I can probably give you some more advice or some other folks to talk to as well. If you're here in Texas, there's a lady here that I can recommend to you also that's in the Guard Dog Association. So that's all the pre-posted questions I've got. Let's see. Steve had made a post here. He's got some fighting females, and he said that Prozac worked for him. Was able to keep them together for 8 years. Wow, that's a pretty good suggestion, Steve. I'm not sure that what the dosage would be or anything like that on there, but if it worked, hey, good for you. So if nobody else has any other questions today, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap that up. Again, I do want to thank our sponsors, Lone Star Tracking and also Spot On Fence, along with the Sheep and Goat Predator Management Board for providing funding for the program. Our next Q&A session will be on Thursday, April 3rd at 2 o'clock. And so, one other quick thing here before I forget. We do have our Livestock Guardian Dog Field Day. It'll be our 9th annual one. It'll be on May the 2nd. If you're interested in attending that, it'll be at the AgriLife Center in San Angelo. You can go on to the website at the center and go to the events page and register for that event. If you're interested in sponsoring the event, or if you have any guard dog puppies and you'd like to bring some to possibly sell to attendees, feel free to reach out to me, and we can get you the paperwork to do that as well. Well, folks, that's all I've got for today. I sure appreciate everybody logging on. Thank you very much for watching, and if you need anything else, feel free to contact me here at the AgriLife Center. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.